Welcome if you're just coming in. Let's see here. So we're going to wait till a couple minutes after just to make sure we can get everyone in. And then, but if you guys can, answer the question in the chat that's on the screen there. If you want to start off by just typing in from where you're watching from or where you're going to be buying a home, what city, state. And then if you're thinking about buying a home from a family member, type in family. If you're thinking about buying a home from a landlord, type in landlord. Or if you're thinking about buying direct and not using a realtor, type in no agent. So if you could type that in the chat. And then the other thing to put in the chat is what's important to you about owning a home? And I usually frame up the question by telling people, you know, you could have thought about buying a home 2 years ago, or you could think about buying a home 2 years from now, but something has you thinking about buying a home right now. So what is that? What's important to you about owning a home right now? So if you could put those things in the chat. And my chat is broken. I don't see anybody. Elizabeth, are you seeing anything in chat? Or Zach?
Nothing. I think just no responses so far.
There we go. Cassie's in. All right. Cool. Right on. And Cassie, are you thinking about buying a home from a family member? Do you have an opportunity to buy from a family member, or like from a landlord that you're currently renting, or just any home in the marketplace? Just to kind of get an idea of what you're looking to learn about. Hi, MG from Dallas. Cool. Okay, cool. And with this, we have a separate webinar that talks about buying a home without an agent. So we aren't going to touch on that too much in this webinar. There's going to be a lot of information, but it's kind of structured. This webinar is structured around if you have an opportunity to buy from a family member, or if you have an opportunity to buy from a landlord that you're currently renting. There's going to be a lot of really important information in this one. But it'll also give you, if you're not doing that, you'll get a little bit of information about the whole home buying process. And so, because we're going to kind of jump into, you know, the whys of buying a home also. And let's see, Kobe, no agents. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's a big reason not wanting to pay rent and start, you know, having the money that you're paying go back into your own pocket. So that's a good reason for owning a home. Okay, well, I've got a lot to go through, so I'm gonna get going here. And in the chat is Zach. He's one of the loan officers who's licensed in a bunch of different states, and he'll be responding in the chat. So I'm gonna just kind of fire hose you guys with a lot of information. And then if you have questions, type them in the chat, and he'll either slow me down and say, "Hey, Albie, answer this question," or he'll answer them himself, and just be kind of in the background with you guys answering questions. So this is for you guys. So make sure you're asking your questions. And if for some reason we don't get to it in the presentation, we'll definitely stick around at the end and answer any question you guys have. But I'm going to try and get you out of here in an hour, so you guys just get a bunch of information, and we'll kind of cruise through this. So this webinar is going to be buying a home direct, and it's going to be, you know, direct from a family member or direct from a landlord is what we really emphasize on this. So, you know, a lot of things people are thinking about is, you know, could I even buy a home? And I don't even think I could buy it for my family member. Like, how would that even work? Or, you know, yeah, okay, so maybe I could buy the house that I'm renting right now, but is that a better way to go than just in the marketplace? And then there's, you know, sometimes you see for sale by owner signs in the neighborhood, and you wouldn't use a realtor to buy that. Sometimes you would, sometimes you won't. but what are the concerns and things you need to know about working with someone that's just a for sale by owner. So those are kind of the main topics we're going to talk about. This is a story. Joseph and Tanya, they actually were renting and they were going to have a baby, and so they needed more room. And so they were renting for about $1,100 a month. And but then they found out that their folks were going to be selling their house, and they said, well, we'd love to have the house, but we're probably not going to be able to afford it. It's going to be more than we want to pay. So we don't really know how we would even go about doing that. But when we structured it, we put it together where there was no money out of pocket, and we actually paid off both of their vehicles. So there was equity in this home where the sellers, the folks, they actually walked with over 200,000. I think it's like $216,000 they walked with. Plus, we paid off both cars, and there was no down payment, no closing costs, and they got into the home with no money out of pocket. So less than it would have been to go rent somewhere else. They're homeowners now. The folks got the money they needed to get out of it. We put it together with a gift of equity over 20%. So they had a lower monthly payment with no mortgage insurance, a really good interest rate, nice low monthly payment. And they ended up, their total outgo was $600 less per month than it was when they were renting, because the payment for the house is a little more expensive than just their rent, but we paid off both their cars. So when we got rid of both car payments, their total net outgo owning a home now. So there's some really creative things we can do if you guys can buy a home from a family member. And we wanted to kind of plant some seeds and talk to you about the benefits of being able to do that and how that could work for you. So my name's Albie. I'm with TrueView Lending. I've been doing real estate for about 30 years, and pretty much every facet of real estate. Got my real estate license, been a loan officer. Back in the early 90s, when interest rates were double digits, I was refinancing people, and we got them all the way down to 9 3/4 or 9 7/8. So they were in single digits. They loved it, coming from 13 to 14% high and then dropping in. And then I ended up buying a house a few years later. I think I was 24, and then I started buying some investment properties and splitting properties, did some manufactured home subdivisions, and worked with a lot of investors, bought homes, built homes, did the construction side of it. In 2008, we were taking a lot of investors and we were buying lots of properties, and then we went over the cliff. And so I lost 22 properties and got to learn about bankruptcy and foreclosures and REOs and short sales and all that not so fun side of the business. And then in that, got my real estate license. I was selling houses for Fannie and Freddie and selling houses all over the country, and started to build back everything. There's another webinar we teach, buying a home with credit concerns. That one's kind of near and dear to my heart because I got to do a full reset when I was early 40s and got to rebuild. And so got back into the real estate or in the loan officer side of things back in, now about 14 years ago, and then been building Teacher Next Door and Nurse Next Door and programs like this nationwide. So done a lot of things in real estate, learned a lot of what not to do, and then kind of rebuilding after, blew myself up. And but it's been an awesome adventure all the way through. So today we're going to be talking about stop throwing money away, and why do you even want to buy a home? And we're going to talk about the emotions that can get involved. Those are a lot of the pitfalls when you're buying with family members or landlords. So we got to be aware of that side of the whole purchasing situation, not just the financial side of it. And then we want to structure a win-win deal for both the family member, if it's the folks or an aunt or uncle or whoever's selling you the property, and then for you also. So we want to make sure that everyone's getting what they want out of the transaction. And then we'd like to help you through this journey as your lender, TrueView Lending, along. We'll talk about that. So this is a story of Tyler and how he increased his net worth in only 4 years. So, if you said, Albie, I want to save up $180,000 and I can set aside, maybe $500 a month. And so if you, paid your rent and paid all your food bills and your car payment and everything else, and you want to save up that $180,000, you could set aside $500 at the end of your month consistently every single month. It would take you 30 years to do it. But if you said, well, I can save $1,000 a month, I can double that, and it'll take you 15 years to do it. But he did it in 4 years. So what happened with him is he bought his first house for $93,000. He was actually about a year out of college, and he couldn't qualify on his own. So we had his mom co-sign for him. They got into the house. And when he bought the house had gone up a little bit. He had a little bit of equity in the house, 9,000. But about a year later, he refinanced the house, took his mom off the loan because now he could qualify for his own. The house value had gone up to 130,000, so he had 37,000 equity in just a year. And then the next year, he sold that home for 193,000. So he gained 100,000 in equity and bought another home, put 80,000 down, put 20,000 in the bank, and then he bought the next home for 330,000, and then that house now is worth about 390,000. So he went from 93,000 to 390,000. So that's what he has in assets, 390,000, but he's got 160,000 equity in the home plus 20,000 in the bank. So in 4 years, he created $180,000 worth of straight income or straight assets, cash. So that's the potential with home ownership. That's unlike any other investment that you're going to do. Is we'll show you here in a minute the compounding effect that happens only with real estate. So let me get my mouse to work here. Okay, so why is buying a home a good idea? So I asked in the when you're jumping in here in the chat, what's important to you about owning a home? Usually when I'm in a group, we'll kind of go around the room and talk to folks about, what it is for them. But, when people just say, well, the opportunity came along, or I'm just tired of renting, usually that's not a big enough why. And so, if you're going to change from renting to owning, there's got to be a big enough why. So a lot of times we want to talk about, what is that why for you? So some people tell me, I want a bigger yard. I want a place that, I've got these big dogs that they're hard to rent a place with, and I've got my own dogs. And so I'd love to have a yard for them to run around, or, I have kiddos and I want to have a swing set out back, or, I've got a lot of friends. We love to do barbecues, and I just want a cool area. We have barbecue, maybe a fire in the back, and where we can kind of do life. But, a big yard is something that a lot of people talk about. And then some people that had a big yard, they're like, I want a small yard, because that big yard, although it looks cool, that takes up every Saturday, and I'm maintaining it and mowing it and caring for it. And so, there's a balance there on if it's the right thing for you or not. But having your own place, your own space, that's a really cool thing. Safe neighborhood, that one comes up a lot, where, whether it's you solo or maybe you and a spouse or maybe some kiddos, safe neighborhood, a place where, different from like an apartment style where there's people all around, kind of have your own space and maybe your own backyard and that kind of thing. But you guys get to pick where you'd like to own that home. And then some people say, well, I'd like to own close to family. And because, I want to do life together. And maybe your family, you've got kiddos, there's built-in babysitters with some family, or you want to, kind of put your roots down near where your folks had their roots and kind of do community and do life with them together. So, that's a big thing that we get is being able to own a piece of property near their family. No rent increases. This one's huge because, when you're kind of budgeting and planning life, it's tricky if you don't know what the future is going to hold. So if you're renting, you don't know, is my rent going to go up $50 next year? Is it going to go up $0, or is it going to go up $200? And, if you're budgeting, like, let's say you're saying, well, I want to plan this trip, and we know, we're going to set aside $200 a month at the end of our bills. And then if your rent gets raised $200, it's like, that just messed up my whole plan. So, those are the things. But when you own a home, you know what the price is for the next 30 years. It's locked in for 30 years. So it's easy to budget into the future because there are no rent increases. And then, big one, we'll talk about this a little bit more, growing equity, a financial vehicle. It's a game changer. This is the reason why this is where the most millionaires are created, is because you get to own an asset and you don't have to pay for the whole thing. Like if you said, I want $300,000 worth of gold, you got to have $300,000 to get that gold. But if you say, well, I want a $300,000 house, you don't have to have $300,000. You might do minimum down 3.5%, where it's $10,500. Or maybe we do down payment assistance where, there's no down payment at all. But, whatever that down payment is, you don't get the benefit just on that. Let's say it's $10,000. You get the benefit on the whole $300,000. So as that $300,000 house goes up in value to, maybe 320 or 330, you get the whole entire asset, but you got it for only a portion of it. And so, but you don't get the benefit only under 10,000, you get it on the whole 300,000. So that's the really cool thing about real estate is you get to leverage that asset and own a big monster asset off a little bit of, equity that you put into it. Plant a tree that'll be yours. This is kind of the concept of, if you're renting right now, even if you're in a house and you're like, kind of looking around, like it'd be really cool if we had some shade here, or maybe if I had like a gazebo out back to have friends over, maybe we had a barbecue, and you're kind of planning all these things, but you really don't want to do that because your landlord's going to get the benefit of it. You're not going to get the benefit because you don't own it. But when it's your own place, now it's like, okay, I can do all that stuff because that's going to come back to you. That's going to add value to your properties. Those trees grow up and create big shade trees. That's going to be an increased value of your home, and you get to benefit from that. So a place to call home, settle, build a family, that's where, if you think of like someone's Facebook account or like a photo album, a lot of times in the background, you see the home. And so, the home, it might be like kids measured up against a tree or holiday events. And there's the wall that, by the staircase, everyone takes pictures there. But it becomes a part of us, and it's kind of a backdrop to our life adventure. And it's really cool to own that backdrop and to have it be part of you. Because it kind of does life with you. So pay yourself versus landlord. Somebody's getting the financial benefit. So, I tell people, like, every month when you pay your rent, it's kind of like you're putting that money into a savings account. And but if you're owning a home, same thing, you're putting that money every month into a savings account. But if you own that home, you have access to that money. If you're renting that home, your landlord has access to that money. You don't. And so that's the thing, the game changer is having access to that in the future. Is I could get all my money back when I sell it, or when I'm renting, I get to leave without any money. That's a big difference. So, owning the home really creates a different trajectory, running financially through life. So this is a chart a realtor gave me. It's a net worth chart. You can kind of see here where this shows, 50 to 75,000 and 75 to 125. So these are the different income levels. And then this is the average net worth of someone that owns a home versus someone that's renting a home. And so this is the difference over here. It's pretty significant. And the reason that is not only because, the value of the home, what's happening there, but when you own a home, a lot of times, if you're a camper and you're like, oh, we rent an RV, but if you own a home, maybe you could buy the RV and store it there, not have storage fees because you got a place. Or maybe you like to ride motorcycles, or, go bass fishing, your own boat, or, whatever your hobby is. A lot of times when you own that house, you can also own that asset. And so that's going to create additional net worth, additional value in what you own. And then, it might be where if you had a place to do that side job of welding or woodworking or crafting, whatever it is, and make money from it, a lot of times people use that because they've got their own space, and that helps to create a greater net worth. So, the obvious one is, okay, so yeah, I own the house, I make a payment every month, and the value of what I owe goes down, down, down. That makes sense. But the other thing that's happening is it's also going up in value every month. So there's two things that are happening in opposite directions. And then that green in the middle, that's your equity. That's the money that you get to keep over time. It grows pretty significantly. We'll show you here in the next slide. But the compounding effect, which is reaping huge rewards from small, seemingly insignificant actions, paying a monthly payment, then those small choices, consistency with time, there's huge results. So that's what we want to show you here. And so if you look at the rent chart, so this goes back, 30 years of renting. And this is the average for a single family home. So not an apartment complex, but an actual home that you could rent. But you can see, back in the early 90s, it was about $350 to rent a house. And then, it doubled in 2008. The average price was about $700. And that's 18 years to double. Someone said, well, what if your rent today, let's say you're paying whatever, $1,500 for rent. And what if it doubled in 18 years? You're like, well, it'd be kind of a bummer. I wouldn't want to pay $3,000 a month, but I probably could handle it. I'll probably have increases in my income, and that'll probably be the normal, going rate for rent. And I could probably handle that. That'd be okay. But in 9 more years, it tripled. So, that 300 went to 900. But if you're paying 1,500, and it went to 4,500. Now you're like, okay, that could start to hurt a little bit. Well, in only 4 more years, it quadrupled. So now your 1,500 goes to 6,000 a month. And that's where, someone that's, this is, what is that, 13, 30 years of life. So kind of like into retirement. So they were paying, somewhere around 350, and now in retirement they're paying over $1,200. Same thing is if you're, paying somewhere around $1,500, but if into retirement you're paying $6,000 a month, that's a pretty significant difference. And you can see like the rent prices did go down a little bit here, and they kind of stayed flat for a while. So, it doesn't mean the prices are for sure going to go up, but you could, maybe it could curve here and go down a little bit, but you kind of see what happens over time. It does kind of eventually, get up that hill. So that's probably what's going to happen in the future. This is the median home price. So this is a single family home, and this is over the last 50 years. So, back in the 60s, you could buy a single family home, typical 3-bedroom, 2-bath, average home out there, $30,000. And so that's pretty incredible. At the time, it seemed like it would be us seeing a house that's, whatever, 300,000-400,000 average price. But it took 8 years to double. So it went from 30,000 to 60,000 in 8 years. And so that's pretty cool. If you bought a house today for whatever, $400,000, and it doubled in 8 years, went up to $800,000, that'd be pretty awesome. But it tripled in just 7 years, 7 more years. And then it quadrupled in only 4 more. And so, this is every time it increased, but it went up 10 times in 35 years. So that house that was, $30,000 was worth over $300,000 in 35 years by the time they retired. That's like today, if you bought a house for $500,000 and it would be worth $5 million by the time you retire, 35 years from now. So, but the cool thing is that $5 million, you can do a lot of things with it. You can pull money out and maybe buy an investment property that's going to generate income for you. You can do a reverse mortgage where, the house actually pays you every month into, throughout retirement. So it kind of supplements your income. But once you own that asset, there's a lot of really cool things you can do with it, buy a business, all the different things. But, and then you can see, if you would have bought a home here, this is where I had a fun adventure, learned a lot about what not to do. But, if you had to buy here and sell here, you'd have been in trouble. But if you bought here and you're like, well, I'm not going to rent, I'm just going to own this home. And yeah, the value went down. My payment didn't change, but the value went down. But then the value started going up and up and up and up. And so, kind of corrected through it. And you can see there's, times where there were flat spots and it did go down a little bit, but same thing, kind of moved it up. And then you can see it started moving up really fast. And, this is 16-time increase in 45 years. So pretty significant what real estate's done in the past. And, we don't know, it's not going to duplicate it for sure, but, it's probably heading, somewhere in that same direction going up. So another way to look at this is, if you would have bought a home in 1990 and then it's free and clear, it's paid off in 2020. But let's say, you were only there for 10 years. So let's say that there's you and there's somebody else, a buddy of yours, and they end up renting a house, and you decide to buy a house, and then they're paying, whatever, $50, $100 less for rent on the first couple of years. But then after those couple of years, their payment goes up. And so now their payment's higher than yours, even though you own a home. But let's say after 10 years, somewhere around, whatever, in this chart here, let's say it's, I think it's about 13 years later, 14 years. But let's say you both have to sell the house because you're getting a job transfer to another city. Well, your buddy that owns a home, he gets maybe a security deposit back, a few $100, but that's it. But you get the difference here of you paying down the mortgage and the value increasing. So that difference here, you're walking with whatever, $80,000, $100,000. And so now you're going to that new job with $100,000. Your buddy that rented's going with zero or, $100 or something, $500, whatever. But it's a huge difference. And then the other thing is, let's say, after 30 years, like, oh, that's cool. I bought a house for whatever, 120, paid it off, and, it's over $300,000. But that's not the end of the story, because the value of the home keeps going up, even though it's free and clear. And now all you're paying is your taxes and your insurance, but the value keeps going up, and it's up over $500,000, that you bought for 120. So that's, again, the huge thing about real estate is, it takes a portion to buy it, but you get the advantage of the whole entire asset. So, the absolute goal of buying direct is a win-win for everybody that's in the transaction. So, buying from a family member, the pros are, there's great deals that you can get, life-changing opportunities. There's not a realtor commission involved. So, Sometimes people could use a realtor. You really don't have to because of family members, so you can work out all the details and save that money and then use that money actually in the transaction. We'll show you that here in a minute. But you know, that's the next one here. You could use the money that would have gone to the realtor to their commissions and structure it into the transaction. And the sellers can actually get the exact money they need. If they say, well, you know, we really wanted to walk with 200,000 or are we going to walk with the max amount of money, they can actually make more money selling to a family member than they could in the open market. And again, I'll show you that here in a sec. But you know, there's no competition because it's not like, well, we got to try and negotiate this real quick because somebody else might come and buy it. If you're dealing with a family member, you don't have those stresses. And a lot of times there's no down payment because we can do a gift of equity where the seller gives you the equity in their home because they're a family member, they're allowed to, and then that's your down payment. And then you know what you're buying. Like, you know, you've probably been in that house a lot, especially if it's your folks or grand folks or, you know, whatever, aunt or uncle. But you kind of know what you're buying and you're going to get an honest answer from what's actually going on with it from, you know, family members. And we can do custom terms like the example I showed you where we paid off the cars in the transaction. We can do things like that if you're buying from a family member. And then a cool thing is, you know, keep it in the family where the folks like, you know, we're going to go downsize, but it's really cool that you guys have the home now and the backyard and all the stuff we did, and we get to pass it on to you. So it's really cool to be able to do that. And cut the costs of being able to buy a home. It really could reduce it if you're buying from a family member. And then, you know, we can go as fast or as slow as everybody needs to go, but it's really pretty easy to put together if you have someone that knows what they're doing, you know, to make sure. And then being able to move on the schedule that, you know, you guys want to set up where, you know, maybe we close on the house and the folks stay there for another 2 months, or, you know, maybe you guys move in together and they're there for a longer time, or maybe, you know, they got to get to a job and they've already left. So we're doing a little faster, but however we need to set that up, we've got the flexibility to put that together. So there are some pitfalls that people fall into when buying a home from family members. So we want to make sure you guys are aware of those. And, you know, the one is neglecting to formalize the contract. And I think I've got these broken out. So I'm just going to go through them real quick. One's not getting an independent appraisal. One is underestimating emotional challenges. And that's a big one we want to talk about. Skipping a formal inspection. You don't want to do that. And I'll show you why. Wanting realtor representation, again, it's going to cost you money, and a lot of times you don't need it. And then contract protections to avoid misunderstandings, because a lot of times, you know, if we don't have it spelled out really clear in the contract, then there could be some things that are misinterpreted, or gosh, I thought that, or I thought you were going to do that, and it could create some hard feelings. So we want to make sure that we've got clarity all the way through there. We'll go into that a little bit. And then, you know, sometimes people don't think about all the negotiations and all the different things that you can do. So we want to make sure that you guys are aware of all the things that are going to be moving parts in this to put together up front. And then a lot of people don't understand how to use the equity in the property. Like, you know, most people don't think when I buy a house, I can pay off my cars, but there's some really cool things you can do with using that equity in strategic ways to make it a win-win for both parties. And then, you know, failing to prepare for future repairs and maintenance, where if we know about them, then we can do it. Sometimes we put it into the contract, have it happen there, or maybe we just are aware of them and we're setting it up in the future where we know this roof's, you know, probably got about 5 years left in it, but we want to put aside an account for it. You know, we could put that aside up front in the transaction rather than, you know, redo the roof now, but you have the money set aside for it. So a lot of really cool things we can do. So first one, neglecting to formalize a transaction. You know, a lot of times people are like, well, we'll just kind of figure it out along the way. And, but a lot of times when we figure it out along the way, that's where, well, I thought you meant this, and well, I kind of thought you meant that. And now there's disputes and there's hard feelings, and we don't want to have an argument because we're getting such a good deal. But I really, now I'm kind of frustrated about this deal. And so there's a lot of that kind of stuff that can happen. So, you know, we want to make sure that there's clarity, because that's going to be the key to making sure that we're resolving all those things. We've addressed all those things. Everyone has the right expectations, and then we have the right results based on those expectations. So clarity, your loan officer is going to walk you through a lot of this stuff, but that's going to be a big piece to it, is to make sure. So, you know, using an agent versus going solo, you could do both ways in it, but you know, the agent, they're going to have protections in the contract, and usually the protections are because you don't know the seller, and you know, the seller who knows what they're like, what kind of people they are. And so, what are they trying to do in the transaction? So a lot of times you do need that realtor to avoid, lawsuits and arbitration and all that kind of stuff with a realtor. But if it's a family member, that's not typically the situation. So, you can save some money by not having to use that realtor. So independent inspection, this is a huge one where, let's say you're buying a house from your folks, and maybe that they fix that water leak, but they kind of fix it with some duct tape, and maybe do the quickie fix, and it worked. It still just leaks a little bit, but not that bad. It might be a little tricky to say, hey, you did that thing kind of a weird job, like we really got to get that fixed. Like, what do you mean I did a weird job? I thought I did a good job. And so it could be something where it causes tension. And so if you get a third party, a home inspector, to go through and do an inspection, and they check out everything on the house, and so they're gonna say, hey, here's a picture of this water leak here and how it was fixed. I suggest you get a professional plumber to come in here and do that. And now it's not you saying it, it's this third party, this home inspector that said it. And then you're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Hey, how do we deal with this? Because this is in the report now. And now it's like, oh yeah, we'll get that fixed. Let's pay a plumber to do it or whatever. But it's not you having that conversation. The third party put it together. They have photos and explanations on what needs to be done and what needs to happen to correct it. And then so it kind of explains it all and puts it all out there, so you don't have to have weird conversations. But and then that'll kind of help negotiate through it. And it'll catch issues that maybe you're not aware of, that hey, this air conditioner unit is 23 years old. It's getting on its last leg here. You're like, oh, I thought it worked perfect. And it did every summer you're hanging out there. But, it is an older unit. So maybe that's something we want to look at getting replaced. But you're going to be aware of all the working systems of the house and what needs to be addressed. And then a lot of times we could put that into the transaction. So those costs to fix those things, rather than coming out of pocket, we could actually have it come out of the equity in the home and get it fixed in the transaction. So that's how we address that a lot of times. So now you've got brand new whatever they are, if it's an AC or a water heater or a furnace or dishwasher, all those different things, they could all be addressed then. But underestimating the emotional challenges, this one, when you're buying a home, you're dealing with expectations, and some of them are not spoken and they're just thought. And so when they think something that's not kind of spelled out, another party could misinterpret it and think a different way. And if it's not written out clearly, that's where the mistakes happen. So one of the things we want to do is make sure we're writing down those things, and we're writing, hey, that refrigerator is included, or the washer and dryer. Like, oh, we were thinking we are going to take those. Like, oh, okay, so you are going to take, yeah, we're going to take that. Well, let's write it down. So now there's not a misunderstanding, or anything in the house. It could be a lawn tractor or a certain clock, or but anything that's affixed to the property, you're assuming that's going to go with the property, but you don't want to assume. You want to make sure to have a conversation about that, so everyone's on the same page. So this is a transaction where you could buy from a family member. So this is how the numbers kind of break out. So let's say you're buying a home for your folks, and they originally bought the house for $250,000, whatever, 10 years ago. And now that house is worth $500,000. And they had a loan on it, and they've got about $160,000 on the loan that has to be paid off. So there's about $340,000 worth of equity in this home. And so let's say they say, well, we'll sell it to you, but we got to walk with $200,000 because we want to go buy this other home, and we'd like to make at least $200,000, give you guys a nice situation and kind of bless you. And so as long as we get $200,000, then we're happy and we can make this work. And so they want to walk with $200,000. We got to pay off that loan for $160,000. We've got closing costs about $15,000. So we would set up a new loan of about $375,000. And so if the house price, if the value is $500,000, so that shows that you've got a down payment gift of equity of $125,000. So because it's more than 20%, that means there's no mortgage insurance. So you got a lower monthly payment because this gift of equity that your folks gave you, there's no closing costs. So you're getting into the home with zero out of pocket, and your folks are walking with $200,000, and they're going to buy their next home. So, that's how we set it up as a win-win for everyone. But let's say, they said, hey, we got to make the most money out of this thing. We're really tight. We got to get every last dime out of this. So maybe we should sell it in the marketplace. Well, the same scenario in the marketplace, 500,000 what it's worth. They owe 160. There's 340 equity. There's closing costs. The buyer's gonna have a down payment. The typical realtor commissions about 6%. And then right now in the marketplace, sellers are usually paying about 3% seller concessions. And so, if you add all that up, the seller's going to walk with 295,000. And so we said, well, what if we do this? If we sell it to a family member, we don't have this realtor commission of $30,000, but we're going to use that realtor commission to help the buyers buy the house. But we're not going to have to do all this seller concession either. So the seller is actually going to make more money if they sell it to a family member than they would have if they sold it in the open market. So that's where they could actually get another $12,000. And the cool thing is the family member, they had their down payment and their closing costs covered because the money they would have paid a realtor, they're giving it to you. And then they're going to help you out with another 2,500, but it doesn't have to be this full 15. Now, they could structure where they give you more money, but if they wanted to max it out and make the most amount of money, they would actually make more money selling it to you than they would selling it in the open marketplace. So I wanted to also show you that one, just in case, family members like, well, we wouldn't mind selling to you, but we got to get top dollar. They still could, and you could get into it with no money out of pocket. So, these are 10 keys to buying a home from a family member. First one is to make sure, I'm done renting. I get it. I want to start owning a home. I want to build equity. My why is big enough is to own a home. And so, but if you're thinking about buying a home and it kind of makes you nervous, that's normal. That's not unique. That most people have those, that anxiety. And so, as long as your why is big enough, we'll get through all the questions and concerns and all that. But you want to make sure that you're understanding all the myths of buying from a family member, which is I gotta use a realtor, gotta pay a realtor. Nope, you don't have to. And well, then we probably have to have an attorney review the contract. No, if it's a family member, we just got to make sure the contract has certain things in the contract, and then that way we avoid all the misunderstandings and both sides are protected. Well, I got to have a big down payment. Nope, you can have a zero down payment if we do gift of equity, or even down payment assistance if we needed to. And then, need to have money for closing costs? No, we get seller concessions. They can pay all that. And so, well, there's too many issues that can arise and create family tensions. We don't want to do, family Thanksgiving if they felt like we got one over on them or they got one over on us. It would be awkward. As long as there's clarity and there's understanding up front, then, and we have contracts written and both parties agree, then a lot of times all that stuff's alleviated. So, another one, people are, well, contracts are too hard to write on our own. Got to use an attorney. No, we'll give you a sample contract. We'll make sure you include all the things on it. But you can just use one off the internet as long as it has all the parts of the contract. That's fine to use. And then, well, I got to have at least $1,000 to buy a house. Really, you don't. I mean, you could open escrow for $50 and then not have any other costs if you wanted to set it up that way. And then, family seller won't make enough money. That's a myth. We just showed you how they actually can make more money selling it to you than they could in the marketplace. So, the step number 2 is to get with your family and just kind of understand, well, what's the house worth and what do you guys want to net? What do you want to walk with? And how much would you be willing to sell it to us for? And then with that equity that's there, we kind of get creative on how we want to put that together. Are we doing closing costs? Are we doing down payment? Are we doing anything else we need to pay off? But, we'll figure all that out, have a conversation about it, and then figure out when does everyone want to have this thing completed? Is this a 30-day thing? Or is this a 3-month or a 6-month thing? Whatever we want to create it as, we can set it up that way. And then we'll set the terms, and then we'll get the contract put together so everyone's in agreement and no misunderstandings. And then, to show the seller, your family members, you mean business, you want to get pre-approved. The cool thing about pre-approval is that also might add another layer to this where, if you said, well, we can buy the thing for 305 and we give the approval, we say, hey, you're only approved for 300. Like, okay, well, let's negotiate that or figure this out. Or, but having that pre-approval can help the negotiation depending on what we need. We might need to just, if they want 305, and maybe you've got some extra credit card debt, we pay off the credit card debt. Now you could qualify for 320. And so, but we use that equity to pay out the credit card debt. So a lot of cool things we can do structuring it and getting creative. And then, in getting approved, you're going to have initial conversation with your loan officer, and they're going to go through, what are the options with what you're trying to do, how much money you have set aside, what the timeline is, where you want to be, what strategy, and then talk about the opportunity of buying from a family member, and then be able to kind of set up some ideas to think about, to have those conversations. They'll get the documentation. You'll hop online, do a secure loan app. It takes about 10 minutes. And then they'll get it pre-approved, and then they'll go over the options with you and say, okay, this is what we got you approved for. Here's how we can set it up, give you ideas. And then you're going to structure the deal with whoever the family member is, the home seller, and then make sure we understand the numbers. We'll give you different ideas to structure it. A lot of times we'll be involved in those conversations because the other side of the family, maybe the folks like, well, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. What about this? What about this? And how can we do that? And they'll have a lot of questions. So if we're on a 3-way call or a Zoom meeting, we can kind of go through that, make sure, both parties are really aware of what's happening there. And then you guys are going to create the contract, and we'll help you do this if you need help. But you're agreeing upon the sale price and how much money they're going to walk with, how much money you're coming in with, if any. We're going to finish up the contract, sign it by both parties. We're going to open escrow, and then get the home inspection done. And now once escrow is open, depending on it's a 30-day, 45-day, however long you guys want to set it up for, we do the final underwriting, the appraisal, go into funding, closing. You guys sign 1,000 pieces of paper, and happy homeowner. Woohoo! So the reason why it's not a nice smooth line, because sometimes there's ups and downs, and that's just part of the adventure. Sometimes the house doesn't appraise for what we thought, and we need to readjust the numbers, or maybe there's something that comes up in the home inspection, and maybe end up not wanting to buy the house because there's too big of issues with it. But a lot of times they're fixable things, and we just kind of, get an agreement on who's paying for it and move forward. But, a lot of times there's different things that come up. So that's all part of the adventure. But, handshake deals are great until they're not. And so that's where people ask, well, do I have to have a state approved contract, or, what does it have to include? And now this isn't just to protect you, but it'll also protect your family members too. So both parties are kind of protected in the contract. And people are like, well, what could go wrong? And a contract's going to keep all the emotions dialed in the right way and ensure everyone's on the same page and they're all same understanding. So this is the 5 parts of a purchase agreement. And so this is in every real estate contract. Sometimes real estate contracts are 10 pages long. And the reason why they're long is because of lawsuits, and like, oh, we didn't address that, so let's add this paragraph, or, oh, there's a new lawsuit, let's add this paragraph. And so they get to be pretty long because there's a lot of misunderstandings. But when you're doing, working with a family member, you could write on a napkin. We suggest doing a little more formal, where use one from the internet, or we can give you a copy of one. But these are the main things that are going to be included on it, which is the price. Obviously we've got the sale price there, so everyone understands. We've got the critical deadlines, the home inspection period, and the close of escrow date. So, whether we're closing in 60 days or 20 days, or, however everyone needs it to happen, we can structure around that. And then, set it up that way so it's a benefit to both parties. Seller contributions, once we've structured the deal, this will be the seller concessions. How much are they paying on your behalf? Is it, the gift of equity? Is it your closing costs? Are they buying down the interest rates? You have a nice low monthly payment. What are we using those seller contributions for? And then we've got the earnest money. So earnest money in a typical transaction, it's the money you put in up front, and you've written the contract, and you say, hey, I'm earnestly interested in buying this house. Here's my money that shows you my earnest deposit, and it's applied up front. It's given to the title company. They hold on to it, but it's given, or it's applied towards your closing costs and your down payment. So you're using it at the end, but you're giving it up front. Now, if it wasn't a family member, a seller would like a lot of earnest money, because they think, well, the more earnest money you have, that's at risk. And so that means you're really wanting to buy our house. And as a buyer, you want that really low, because you're like, well, it's money that's at risk and I could lose it. So I want that to be as low as possible. But typically it comes in around 1%. So if it's a $300,000 house, it's usually around $3,000. But when you're buying from a family member, it's usually like $50 or $100, because it doesn't need to have that security that it would in the open marketplace. And then the last thing is, what's included on the sale. This one, as long as you list the things, you're going to have hardly any issues. But if you're buying a house from, not a family member, I do a little story where, let's say you're walking through the house and you walk into the kitchen, you're like, oh, it's a really cool looking refrigerator. And the refrigerator says, hey, how you doing? You're like, whoa, refrigerator's talking to me. Like, hey, yeah, by the way, you're low on butter. You want me to order that from Amazon? And you're like, yeah, okay, go ahead and order that. And so you're like, that's really cool, talking refrigerator. And then you come back and you're like, yeah, let's put that in the contract. We want that talking refrigerator. So you put in there, refrigerators included in the sale. And then you do the final walkthrough right before you're closing. You're like, oh, I want to go side of that refrigerator. And you walk in the kitchen and you're like, wait a minute, there's not even an ice maker on this thing. This isn't the talking refrigerator. And it's just a regular, two-door deal. And you're like, wait, what's the talking refrigerator? You just said refrigerator. You didn't say the talking refrigerator. We moved that one. You're like, no. That was in the, and so there could be some confusion in that. So a realtor would usually say, it's the Samsung XJ2 talking, whatever, and really square away which refrigerator we're talking about. And the same thing with, it's a nice washer dryer. Like you want to, kind of make sure that those are specified as which ones they are when you're including things in the sale. But again, family members not as important, but there could be a little misunderstanding. So we just put a normal refrigerator. That one we spent a lot of money on. Like, no. I want the one that we spent a lot of money on. Let's make sure we write that in here. And so again, everyone understands up front. And so there's not any misunderstanding. So title, this is where, the title company is the third party, the disinterested party. They actually insure the clean title of the property. And they're making sure there's no surprises. And so they're protecting the long-term ownership interest. And so, you open up title or you open up escrow with the earnest money. And then the title does a search on the property to make sure there's no liens, there's no encumbrances, there's no, someone says, my great grandpappy owned this property and here's the deed to it. And you're like, whoa, what? I just paid $400,000 for this thing. And but the title company would ensure that you're protected in that. So that's why you have title insurance, to make sure there's no other legal claims against the title of the property and that it's free and clear. And then they also kind of make sure it's a secure transaction. They're the third party disinterested. So they say, okay, seller, give me the house, buyer, give me the money. We're going to switch it. And buyer, here's the house, seller, here's the money. And so they're the ones that's putting it all together, getting things notarized and doing all that. So that's escrow title that's involved in the transaction. And they, they clear the title to make sure that you're getting something that nobody has any misunderstandings about. Even, buying from a family member, there could be some weird lien that popped in. So you definitely, title insurance is good to have on it, and make sure you're protected. But home inspection, we talked about, don't skip this step. Hire a pro to go do it from top to bottom. And there's a problem. It's better to know now than once you move in. And the repairs are a lot less expensive if they're caught early. So a lot of times we'll get them resolved, get them fixed, and they don't turn into bigger issues. And the repairs can be negotiated in there. And then and we talked about how when a third party kind of points it out, it alleviates the tension. So make sure you get that home inspection. And how do you know what the home's worth? Is we get an appraisal on the house. And so you can have a guesstimate on what it is based on, what everything else says, but the appraiser is the one who gives us the final number. So we've got the sale price and the appraised value. As a lender, we can lend against the lower of whichever one it is. So a lot of times we'll structure and we'll say, well, we know this house is worth probably about 300,000, but let's put the contract together at 320 and see if we can get it, put together that way. Cause it'll look like we've got a bigger down payment if we said it was worth 320. It's not going to change what anyone's going to net on it. But so then the appraiser comes back and says, hey, this thing's only worth 310. You're like, oh, cool. It's better than the 300 that we thought it was worth. So a lot of times we want to push that value a little bit, let the appraiser come back down. But we can structure it that way. Both parties will understand, hey, we're just doing this to see if we can get a little more for it, but here's how the money is going to be spent. And, so it's all clear for everybody, but sometimes it's a good strategy. And then, but that's how we get the true value of the property, is the appraiser checks comparable properties and square footage and the yard size and how many bedrooms and baths and how many stories and all that stuff, and then comes up with the value of the home. But and then the appraisal, we actually will reimburse the cost of the appraisal. So at the end, we'll show you how to get the $500 certificate, but appraisal is usually around, $450 to $550, but we'll reimburse that for you if we're doing the transaction with you. And then, lock it and secure the loan. Once the appraisal is done, home inspection's done, finalize the financing, lock in your interest rate. And then we can get a gold pre-approval. which is where if you needed to, you could close in 14 days. But that's where we actually run your file through underwriting, and we have a full underwritten approval. So a lot of times that's good to do. And then all we need to do is wait on the appraisal and title and close the thing up. So last one is, making it official, where you finish the deal. You sign the contract, you open escrow, we get the appraisal ordered, and then we go into final underwriting, closing up the signing all the docs, closing everything, closing the deal. But those are kind of the overview of the steps to put it together. Then woohoo, move in. So this is a link here where if you guys want to snap a pic of that, it'll show you how to get the appraisal paid for. And I think Zach will put the link in there in the chat if you guys are watching from your phone and you can't take a picture with your phone of your phone. So he'll put that in the chat there so you guys have that. And now we're shifting gears into buying from a landlord. So if you guys have an opportunity where you're renting a house and you could buy from a landlord, a lot of the stuff's the same, but some stuff's a little bit different. So this is where you want to have everything in writing and make sure that it's really clear on what you're asking for, what you're getting, who's paying for what. And but they're going to save 6% that they would normally pay a realtor by selling it to you. So we want to figure out how we're using that 6% where it's a win-win for both parties. A lot of times that's going to go towards your seller concessions, which is you could pay for all your closing costs, maybe buy down your interest rate. Maybe we do what's called a 2-1 buy down, where the first year it's bought down 2%, so you're in the 4s, and the next year it's at 5, and then all the rest of the years it's in the 6s. It's a 30-year fixed rate, but it's just bought down for the first 2 years. With the anticipation is that probably sometime in the next couple of years you're going to refinance, so it gets you a nice low payment until you do refinance. But a lot of cool things we can do with that seller concession, and then so we can still do 0 down. But we've got a lot of different programs with down payment assistance that'll help you with that. Each state has kind of a different state-specific down payment assistance, and then there's national programs. So both those are available to you, and your loan officer can go over all the different ideas that would best suit your needs, depending on FICO score, how long you're going to be there, if we need to worry about the repayment or no repayment of the down payment assistance because we want to refinance it. But they'll go through all that stuff with you on what's best for you. And then, title company is going to be crucial because they're going to be the third party disinterested that's kind of helping you through the transaction. And then, your security deposit that you have with the home you're renting, we could turn it into a credit. So sometimes it can go towards closing costs. Sometimes it could be your earnest money, or you can just wait till the end and get it back. It's just, kind of helping you. You skip a month of your first payment, so it wouldn't be your first payment, your first month. So it'd be the second month, but maybe you could use that for that, your first actual house payment, which would be 30 days after you close. So, and then earnest money, talk about if there has to be, sometimes it doesn't have to be if it's buying from a landlord, but sometimes there will be some, and who's going to hold on to it? Is the title company, or is it closing attorney, depending on what state you are, and then how much it's going to be. You guys are going to negotiate that with the landlord. But so there's going to be some pros from buying from your landlord. You don't have to move, so you don't have to pay the cost to move to another place. So that's kind of fun, and you know what you're buying. Like, you've been there, you've been renting it. You know the pros and cons of that house. You know what needs to be fixed up. You've been living in it, and so it's an awesome opportunity to get into home ownership. It may not be the house you have 3 years from now, but at least you get into home ownership, create some equity. Start paying yourself instead of your landlord, and then now 3 years from now, sell it, take the equity out of that thing that you made, and go buy the house you want. But it's a really good first step sometimes to get into home ownership. And then a lot of times it's not going to be realtor commissions because you're going to deal straight with the landlord. And then we'll use that savings and structure it to your advantage. So we'll go over different ways. And sometimes you might want to upgrade. It's like, well, we need to get a new kitchen in here, a new bathroom, or a new roof, or new flooring. And so we can do some upgrades when you're buying the house. There's different loan programs where we can actually structure those into the loan so you don't have to pay out of pocket. And then, one of the cool things is, like, your neighborhood, the commute to work, like the local restaurants. So, you're already familiar with the property. So a lot of times it's really cool just to be able to own that thing and then have the financial benefit. And, however long you're going to be there, that's up to you. But, buying from landlord, the contracts and the contingencies. So, again, the earnest money, can we lose it? Yeah, you can. And how do we protect it? Your loan officer is going to go more about that, but, there's going to be times in the contract where you could lose the earnest money. And so we want to make sure you're aware of that. And then, but you've got some contingencies to protect it. So, there's a home inspection and you could say, hey, I don't like the house anymore. We had this home inspection. If you're not going to fix these things, give me back my earnest money. I'm going to walk with it. There's a loan contingency. So if something happens where, you can't, you lost your job, or, something changed financially where, you wrecked a car and you got to take time off work or, whatever it is. But if you can't qualify, if you have a loan contingency, you're protected. You get your earnest money back. And so we want to make sure that protection's in there. And then clear title, if they can't give you clear title, or maybe there's, a fence that's encroaching and the neighbor's like, we're not moving it. And you're finding that out now where, any issues with the property, those have to be cleared. And if they're not cleared, you get your earnest money back as long as that contingency is written into the contract. So these are the things we want to make sure we're including in the contract, probably more so than buying with a family member, because, the seller of it, you might have, it's not family. So it's not someone that's kind of looking out for your best interest. But so this presentation kind of gives you an overview of buying from a landlord and family member. But these are just kind of sampling of ideas. And to make sure we're successful in doing this, we want to have you get with the loan officer and get approved and then start putting the pieces together. And then they'll kind of help structure like what you want to ask the seller, whether it's your folks or a landlord, and start planting some ideas, and then get you a copy of the contract, and so you guys can go through that. But the things that we don't know in this presentation is what's the right sale price for your purchase. So depending on your needs, what you want for a monthly payment, what you want for a down payment, closing costs, and then once we know that and we figure out, okay, well, what's the payoff of the loan for the landlord, or the payoff for loan for the family member. And then what are we structuring it? Like, who wants to walk with what and how much money? And then, we can put those pieces together. And then what do we think the house value is? What do we think it really appraised for? And then once we know some of these pieces, now we can help you structure it the right way. And then, where do you want your monthly payment? And if it's close and we got to get a little lower, there's a lot of things we can do to make that monthly payment a little bit lower. So, your loan officer is going to help you with suggestions, and then you're going to give them feedback on like, yep, that sounds great. Or no, I want to figure out a way to make it lower. They'll have some ideas on how to help you structure it that way. And then, we talked about the 2-1 buy down. That's a really cool way to go. If we know we're probably going to refinance the next 3 years, but we want a nice low payment now, and we get the sellers to pay for it, then it's kind of a win-win all the way around. So, if I told you we could help you negotiate and navigate the entire process with your family and make sure it's a win-win altogether, and we would help you eliminating the guesswork and give you a nice clear path to home ownership and helping you reach your ownership goals quickly, and making sure it's intelligent for how you guys want to structure it, and then ensuring you've got a roadmap so you know exactly what needs to happen. Sometimes there might be something we got to pay off some debt to be able to qualify, or maybe we got to have a cosigner, or a lot of different things that could happen, but we'll give you a clear roadmap on how to make sure those pieces all come together. And so, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to help you structure the financing and make sure you've got all the advantages. We're going to help you avoid any emotional conflicts with, family members and landlords. We're going to ensure that there's no hidden costs or surprises, everything up front, so both parties are aware of it, so we don't have any issues. And then we're going to educate you on how to put the paperwork and the contract and make sure you're doing everything to protect you, protect the sellers. And then we'll help structure the best loan terms for you, what's going to be best for your specific situation. And then it will help you coordinate with all parties. So a lot of times people are like, well, I can't really, he's told me a lot of information. It's hard for me to repeat it. Like, let's get him on a Zoom call. Let's get on a 3-way call. Let us help you with that. Like, oh, great, let's do that. So, we want to make sure it's easy for you. And then we'll give you guidance all the way through, every step along the way, to make sure that, you're understanding, answering all your questions. And you're going to have a lot of questions when you're buying a house. That's just part of the adventure. So, the big thing is we're about happy homeowners. We're about family landlord, great terms for both parties, and then making sure the payments are affordable. And you've got all the options with down payments, closing costs, and then you're going to be building wealth because you're going to be owning that home. So again, this is the voucher here, and we'll take any questions. Oh, that was perfect. 3:59. So on my clock. So we'll stick around and answer any questions you guys have. But thank you so much for hanging out. Hopefully you got some information out of it. There's a couple different webinars we do with buying a home with credit concerns, buying a home without a realtor. And then there's another one that's just a regular home buying webinar. A lot of different things that you're going to negotiate in the marketplace, and how to make sure you're finding the right home, and what are some kind of tips and tricks on how to do that. So if you're in the marketplace, that home buyer webinar is a really good one. But if you go to that link that's on I think it's now in there, there's a place where you can sign up for any of those other webinars. And then if you want to get started and work with loan officer, Zach's great to work with, or you can click on there if you're not in one of his states, and then we'll set you up with one of the loan officers that is licensed in your state and can talk to you about all the different options and help you structure it. So again, thanks for hanging out, and we'll stick around and answer any questions. But you guys, if you got to hop off, you're free to leave. And we'd love to go on the journey with you, and make sure you own a home, because it's a game changer. So, all right, Zach, anything we need to get back to for questions you had, or you've been answering everything?
No questions. Pretty straightforward on this one. So
can Teach Next Door program still be used in buying a home? So yes. So Teach Next Door program, the benefits come from 3 places, main benefits. There's just some littler ones, but there's the main ones of the title company, which yes, we can still use. The lender, we still reimburse the appraisal. So yes, you can use that. The realtor involved, they give you 20% of their commission, but there's not going to be a realtor involved in this transaction. And then there's also the insurance. We've got a couple national companies that are really aggressive on their prices. So you'll save with the insurance companies. And then also with, we know of like home inspectors and contractors that also give back to teachers and nurses and, all the next door folks. So that piece of the discount, you'll get some of it, but it'll also stack on top of the, whatever down payment assistance programs. There's also free money for buying homes in different cities. And so your loan officers know about all the different opportunities that are available, and we got to stack all those on top of each other. And the big one is seller concessions, whether it's a family member or whether it's a landlord, but helping them to understand the seller concessions, helping you negotiate those, and really making it easy for them to understand, oh, that makes sense. Let's put that in there because it's really going to benefit you. So we can show them the benefits and help structure all that. But yeah, good question. Are you the one who will be our agent? So I guess there's not going to be a real estate agent in the transaction. We would help you with questions if you're dealing with a landlord and they're like, hey, use this contract. Then we want to see that contract, and we want to make sure, well, now look at this here. Did you see this? And look at how they got this set. And we'll walk through all that stuff with you, like what an agent would do. But we're not going to be your agent. So we don't earn any money on the real estate side of it. We only earn money doing the loan, but we could help point things out to you in the contract that you have signed. We've got example contracts you can use, but a lot of the stuff we're going to make sure you're protected in it and make sure you know what you're signing. And if you have questions, we can answer questions, but we're not actually a real estate agent. We're not licensed to do that. But again, you don't need that in these transactions. Now, if the other side does have a real estate agent and you don't, a lot of times you want to either look at maybe getting your own agent, or at least making sure you have someone that's answering a lot of questions, whether it's a family member knows, whether it's your lender that's helping you with the financing. We would love to say, hey, look at this, look at this, look at this, and help you with those things. But, sometimes if they have an agent and you don't, it's kind of like, going to a court situation and they've got an attorney and you're representing yourself. Sometimes you can do okay there, but sometimes you can't. So you got to make sure, what you're getting into and who's protected. But usually in a family situation, a lot of times you don't need an agent. But yeah, great question. Let's see here. So contact me with getting contact. So on that link, and actually, is it in the chat here? Yeah, TruviaLending.com. Oh, that's Zach right there. Yeah, you can either go there, or is there a webinar in here?
Yeah, I saw the link in there. It is up. I'll paste it in there again.
Okay, cool. Because that'll it's a calendar, and then depending on what state you're licensed in, if Zach can't help you because he's not licensed in your state, then one of the loan officers that is licensed there will get a hold of you and kind of walk you through all your options. Let's see here. Right on. Thank you. Oh yes, we'll be loan officer. We'd love to be your loan officer. We don't have to be your loan officer.
Yeah, I think that was my mistake when they asked about agent. I was like, yeah, and I meant loan officer, not agent.
Oh, okay.
That was my mistake.
Okay. let's see. Talk about first time buyer. Oh, first time buyer webinar. Yeah. So, and that's also, if you go to TrueViewLending.com, that's our website. And in there, there's reviews, which are kind of cool to read. And you see, you know, a lot of folks that kind of went through the process and, you know, see what their adventure was like. And a lot of people that didn't think they could own a home that own a home now. So it's cool to read those stories. But in there, there's a thing that says webinars, and there's a drop down. And so you can apply there for the webinar link for the first time home buyer one. But the other ones are in the link that he just sent you there. So great questions. All right, and we're kind of getting down to the last few folks. So if you guys want to unmute, if you got a specific question, so you guys helping only nurses or healthcare professionals? No, we help everybody in the marketplace. There's a really cool program that we're part of, which is called the Next Door program, and it's teacher next door, nurse next door, soldier next door, anybody that's serving the community, any city government employee. There's it's I lost my train of thought there. Public servant next door. But that's anybody that's a city or government employee, anybody that's serving the community. That's the Next Door program. So we work with all the Next Door folks, but we also work with people that aren't part of that the Next Door program, and we help them with financing also. So if you're buying a home from a landlord or from a family member, we'd love to help you. And even if you're not, you know, someone that's serving the community, like if you're a truck driver or, you know, someone that's outside of those services, we help a lot of those folks also. So, but great question. All right, and we're getting down to the last bit. So if you guys have any other questions, thanks for hanging out. And we'd love to go on the journey with you, help you out, and definitely own your own home. This is a game changer for your future. And so you guys, if you don't have anything else, have a great evening. If anyone else has a question, you can unmute. Going once. Going twice. All right, guys, have a great evening. Thanks for hanging out. See you.